We join you after a 0-0 draw, which went into penalty kicks against Sporting Kansas City on the road, which was unfortunately a loss for the San Jose Earthquakes. Jamon Moore, Robert Jonas, Alex Morgan. Let's get your initial thoughts after the match. Jamon, I'm going to kick it over to you first. What do you think? Quakes go on the road, can't quite pull it off.
Well, there was, I think, an overall decent game plan of how they wanted to come out tonight. Obviously, it didn't surprise any of us that they come out in a very defensive posture for the first half, and then they turn it on in the second half. And the second half, felt like it was pretty decent. And Cade Cowell, honestly, with one of his better performances, he sees Sporting Kansas City on the schedule and he circles it because those were a couple of his better performances of the season. Unfortunately, as has been the case throughout the season for him as well, none of those efforts go in the back of the net. Really enjoyed the Jack Skahan substitution, and I thought most of the subs who came on, added value. But the problem was it took off two key penalty takers, Jeremy Abobasi and Jamiro Montero. And, when you're coming down against the best penalty keeper, in the history of the league, maybe, up against Nick Raimondo for sure, 1 and 2 right there. Again, the Earthquakes come up short against Tim Melia. How many more times does it have to happen for the coaching staff to learn their lesson about who they keep on the pitch at the end of the game?
Jamon, do you really think that different penalty kick takers would have made it past Melia? He guessed right every time. He's not letting that ball in the back of the net, Jamon. I don't think it matters if you have Lionel Messi.
We'll go around here, but Melia only saved one penalty. The rest of them, he either didn't save or Jules didn't even challenge him. So Melia only saved one tonight. He didn't save 3. Let's not crown him, another 3-save god like we did 2020. So, I think everyone can kind of chill. This is on, the Quakes for not making them and sending 2 players who didn't make them against them the last time, who both didn't make them this time either.
Robert, let's get you into the conversation here. Why don't you set the record straight? We had Daniel versus Tim Melia. I mean, how did you see it?
Well, they both made one save, so I don't know if you can say one goalie was any better than the other. But, Jamon said something there I think is really important. This team was set up today to play this game close, to play this game potentially to a draw, and it kind of played out exactly as Luchi planned it. You had the return of Carlos Grueso and Jamiro Montero into the lineup. Grueso definitely a defensive-minded player. Montero can go both ways, so he was able to effectively help on defense. And it worked. I mean, they weathered the storm, and with Rodriguez making a key goal line block in the beginning of the second half to keep it 0-0, the Quakes had their opportunities in that last 10 minutes with some of the more offensive-minded subs. I thought Nico Shakiris looked great on his touches. Cade flashing some of what you hope he can do in an entire season, or maybe at least in one game. While they didn't get an effective shot on goal, at least they showed that intent, which I would say is the game plan. They played well tonight. I think they played well enough to sneak a victory, but when it comes down to penalties and Melia's on the other side flashing those gloves, it's always going to feel a little bit rough. And it hurts to know that the same 2 players that started were the same 2 players that missed 3 years ago. That's a kind of a brutal bookend to the Quakes playoff experience in Kansas City. But they did a lot of right tonight. The result is not going to go their way.
Alex, I see you shaking your head. I mean, the Quakes had 0 total shots in the first half. I mean, what are your takeaways from this match?
Look, I'm having trouble feeling very sorry for the Quakes. One, because they've already been through this, right? We've all been here before. The second time around, at least for me, I think it hurts less, and secondly, because they're in Sporting Kansas City in a playoff game going against Tim Melia on penalties. That's like trying to invade Russia in the winter. It's just a known losing strategy, trying to beat Tim Melia on penalties. I don't think the Quakes could have done much differently at all in that penalty shootout. I think that Tim Melia had them sufficiently psyched out from the get-go. Sure, Yule blasted his over the bar. I think that's because Tim Melia got in his head again. I don't think any combination of Quakes penalty takers is going to win them that shootout. I think the problem goes back a lot further. I don't even think the problem was tonight a lot. I think actually the Quakes played quite well tonight. I think Luchi Gonzalez will be very pleased with the way the Quakes played in the 90 minutes tonight. They weathered the storm early on. They started to dictate the game in the second half, and they had good chances going forward. And I think if they went into extra time, they genuinely would have been better suited to win the game. They had the momentum, I think, and had the legs and had the right formation to take it in extra time. But they knew there wasn't going to be extra time, and they didn't have the attacking muster to go and win it in Sporting Kansas City in the 90 minutes. And I think that was predictable. I think the real problem wasn't tonight. I think the problem was the way they ended the regular season and the fact they got themselves into an away, playing game in Kansas City. I think this one was always going to be an uphill battle, and they wanted to avoid this. They should have gone for some wins in that last 2 months of the regular season. They drew 6 out of their last 8 games of the regular season, Phil. They tied their last 4 games. They had gotten any one of those to be a win, they wouldn't have been in this situation. They would have been playing a home playoff game right now, and it would have been a completely different outcome. So I think the problem was the last 6-8 games of the regular season. Luchi Gonzalez, I think, is going to have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and think about the way that he approached those. I think that they were playing from a position of fear, and that's why they got here. That's why it's a 2020 redux, Phil.
Not sure I completely agree that they were playing out of a position of fear. I mean, if you look at the shifts of momentum in the second half, there were definitely some things that the Quakes did that showed some initiative, especially with Cade Cowell coming on and some of the moves that he made offensively and getting things started for them. And we saw a little bit more offense from the team, further on. Of course, as you may have noticed, Sporting Kansas City definitely took back the momentum in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the match. And so that kind of faded away near the end. Jamon, I wanted to kick it back over to you and kind of get your account of how you saw the end of the match. There were some substitutes that Luchi made. I'm interested in what your thoughts are in regards to those subs and how the Quakes kind of finished it off and were settling for a draw and going in for PKs when we know that there was no opportunity to play extra time.
Well, I don't think that they were selling for a draw. I think they definitely went for it in regulation, and I know the fans disagree with that, and that's fine. Everyone can have their opinion on this, but I think the momentum of the game clearly shows, if you take a look at any of the momentum meters that are available out there, SofaScore's got it, FotMob's got it, that the Quakes had dominated most of the second half, that they, their expected goals, such as they were, pretty much all came in the second half. And, they had opportunities. They had 3 shots right in front of goal that were all good quality opportunities, and they didn't put those away. So I don't think that there was ever an intention to play for the draw. Maybe, again, I think we kind of know once it gets on to about the 85th minute or so, Luchi at that point is probably looking to go okay, take the point. In a normal game, and tonight it was, look, we got to this point. He's going to think that he had 50-50 chance to win this game. He's going to think that Danielle is as good as Tim Melia is. Yeah, Melia's got the MLS history. Danielle's played in major tournaments in South America, right? And for his part, he was very happy to have Danielle go up against Melia. Here's the problem. The Quakes penalty takers are not as good as Sporting Kansas City penalty takers. Johnny Russell goes to the exact same spot every single time, and he is money. He goes to that top corner and he does not miss. Why? Because it's unsavable. Alan Polito tried something cute, didn't come off, but stepping up, everyone's going look, Danielle is good, but he's probably not going to stop Alan Polito. But there's nobody that steps up for the Quakes, maybe Christian Espinoza, maybe, that strikes fear in the heart of Tim Melia. Nobody. Now, I think Jack Skahan.
Melia saved Espinosa's last 2 pens, so I don't think he strikes any fear at all, Jamon.
Yeah, and that might be. In Melia's case, I think in other cases, he was 6 for 6 in the regular season or whatever it was, 5 for 5. He had a good regular season. He didn't miss, but he has missed in these situations. And, it's there's just no one in that stepped up that was going to cause a real question for Tim Melia, at least in the mind of Tim Melia. He's very, very confident. Now, Skahan caught him by surprise. And even though he dove the right way, Skahan told us midweek that he felt if he had the opportunity, he put the ball in his spot, Tim Melia is not going to save it. Guess what? Tim Melia got a hand on it. He didn't save it. And by the way, Carlos Acapo, very good. Loved his penalty take. Cool as a cucumber. So and what I would have liked to have seen, if you're going to take out Montero, you're going to take out Gibo. What I would like to have seen was Trauco. I think Trauco definitely should be taking a penalty in this situation. I would have gone Skahan second. I would have gone Trauco third, my personal preference, and Acapo fourth, given who was on. And I'd have to think a little bit about who I'd want to go fifth. But that would have been the order I would have gone with. It almost kind of went that way. But the problem was Jackson Ewell took one that, and Jackson Ewell's just not a penalty taker. And I think he wears the captain armband. I think he's thinking, I have to take one. I'm the captain. I have to step up. They figure it's like a badge of courage for a captain. He's got to step up. He ought to be like, yeah, I'm not very good at this, guys. You guys go ahead. Jamon, that's what you should do. But I'm
having fun thinking of all the different configurations in which the Quakes could have lost a penalty shootout against Tim Melia again.
I think that
I'm right there with you, Alex.
I think that is like just defeatist thinking. I just don't think that way, Alex.
I do agree.
Again, they both saved one penalty tonight. Both keepers saved one penalty. Honestly, it's on Jackson Ewell for missing the goal and putting it down the middle where it was going to be easily savable anyway.
I mean, the stat that they read before Jackson Ewell stepped up and took his pen, he's made 2 of his last 4. He's now 3 and 5.
Yeah.
You don't have a guy who's proven to be bad at penalties take a penalty in the shootout.
I agree, but I think he thinks he has to step up and take one.
Well, so does that say something about Jackson Ewell as a captain, Jamon? Do you think the Quakes need other leaders on the team who fit that role more and understand
the captain? The captain is determined by the players. There's nothing there's nothing that is going to change about the captain situation. If the players think Jackson Ewell is the right captain for the team, he'll continue to be the captain for the team. Unless
they get new players and new leaders in the team who can take.
Get new leaders in the team, then it's a different conversation, right?
Sure. And I do want to get actively to the conversation of where the Quakes go from here and what happens next season, because, the Quakes have been in this position before. They were here 3 years ago. They've been here in decision day in 2021. And I feel like we get caught in the loop of having the same conversation over and over again. And I don't want to just sit around and feel sorry for the Quakes here. I think it's very clear that they have a solid foundation from this year, really solid defense. There's a reason that they went 0-0 this time, and it was 3-3 the last time they were in Sporting Kansas City in this position. It's because their defense is quite good. They need to improve that offense. And I don't want them to sit around feeling sorry for themselves. I want them to take action this offseason to take the steps that they need to be to become a better team and to make the playoffs outright, to be a top 4 or 5 team, because they're going to need to take pretty bold actions to do that. And I think we should start calling for that now. I don't want to waste any time in transitioning towards that conversation, Phil.
Yeah, I think by the way, we expect a lot more from the team. But also, going back to the end of last season, when Luchi Gonzalez first took the helm of the team, like before he actually came on as the head, as the manager of the club, he did say that his goal was to make the playoffs. And one of the other things to consider is the improvements that the team made defensively. Let's not forget that last season the Quakes allowed more goals than any other team in MLS, and this season there was a marked improvement, right, with the defense. So there are definitely some positives moving forward. It might not be what Quakes fans want to hear right now when they get eliminated from the playoffs, but it is a lot to think about going into the offseason. And I agree with you, Alex. I think those calls need to start happening now, because that's what happened at the end of last season. And if we want to see this continued incremental change, hopefully more wholesale change next season, that's what's got to happen. There has got to be the pressure there. I'm hoping we can get Robert back into the conversation here as well. We spent a lot of time talking about the penalties. I tend to, even though Daniel did have he did as well technically as Melia did in the penalty shootout. I do agree with Jamon that, Melia is just such a good keeper, one of the better keepers at penalties in the league, probably since Nick Raimondo, that it's almost a conversation that's, regardless of who the Quakes put out there, we knew what the outcome was going to be. So Robert, kind of thinking about the end of the match here as well, I'm interested in your takeaways as the Quakes kind of got some momentum going, but then quickly lost it and were unable to make anything happen.
Yeah, it's really kind of drifting back to the first half, even when I was, kind of where, this game.
We're getting Luchi right now.
Sorry, Robert.
Sorry,
Hello,
Robert.
everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's post-game press conference with head coach Luchi Gonzalez. We will start with a question from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Luchi. Obviously not the outcome that you're looking for, season's over at this point, but reflecting back on the game, give us your sense first of the effort, and secondly, kind of how things came down, in penalties. As we talked midweek, Tim Mealy is a very good keeper. Your keeper, Daniel, also made a save. It could have gone either way, but they did a better job putting their shots in dangerous spots, in the shootout. But just give us your read. Thanks.
Muted.
Yeah, thanks, Jamon. Look, we came here with a quick turnaround, with a mission, right? Like we didn't celebrate making the playoffs. We were really proud. We reflected in a quick moment, like, hey, we gave validation to all the work we put into the season on off the field, trying to make our fans and our families admire the way we act and play. And we had our ups and downs. And just look at the end of this season, the last 2 months, it was hard to get in the win column, but we fought, we kept building enough points to get into the playoffs. And so proud of that. But moving on quickly, like we came here on a mission. We know once playoffs started, it's a new season. And we came here with a lot of motivation to keep going and earn another game at home, earn the next round, extend our training, extend our schedule. Look, I felt like we answered that with our actions tonight. I thought our intensity was amazing. I thought our energy, our togetherness, our work rate. We got good pressure on the ball. They're a very good team. They combine, they can play out with vertical combinations. They broke us a few times that were dangerous, but we continue to regroup and get behind the ball and then build pressure together. And look, I thought we got into the game eventually, and even in the second half created some good chances. And with a few fresh legs coming in, I thought they did great. So, I thought we were unlucky at the end not to nick a last pass getting into the box, getting just a different play that I think could change the game, put us in the win column in regulation. So proud of the guys and the staff and in our approach and our mentality going into the game, but the outcome definitely will be disappointing. I want to say thank you to our fans and our community for just showing us amazing, relentless support and energy all season long, on and off the field, in and out of that stadium. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. I want to thank our staff. I want to thank their effort and commitment to just be the best they can be, with the players from the front office, working their butts off to just continue to grow the club and move it forward, progress it forward off the field, and then helping us on the field get support with our fan base and our stadium. And I want to thank our club in that way as much as possible. I want to thank our technical staff, our first team support staff. I want to thank the players, man. The players have been amazing. I just said in the locker, like, not all through the adversity, never pointing fingers, never making I didn't feel them making excuses. I didn't feel them, being victims. They just kept being warriors and trying to find solutions and leaning on each other to get better. And I'm so proud of that, because again, our mission was to make our fans and family admire the way we want to act and play. And I believe that is building our game model and our intensity of how we want to play in the field and perform. And so, look, we had a lot of positives to grab. I thought in PKs, anything could have happened. It didn't bounce our way. We didn't get the fortune. And that happens in PKs. You see it in all events, MLS, World Cup, Europe. So that's the game. But look, we took it down to the wire, and we'll grab that as a positive. Now, we're going to be annoyed to watch these playoff games on TV. It's going to bother us. It's too early. I don't even know what we're going to do here in the next few weeks. We'll figure something out, but it's too early. So, as much as we'll reflect and grab the positives and the progress from the season, we want to improve our ambition. We want to raise our own standards and raise the standards of where we want to be in the future. And now we have a reflection process to try to get there and to do that.
Next, we will go to Jason Mastrodonato. Hello, Jason. Can you hear us? All right. While we are waiting for Jason, we will go to Alex Morgan.
Hey, Luchi. Thanks for joining us tonight. I want to get a temp check just about some of the, the emotions and thoughts that are going through your head right now. I imagine there's, probably a mix of pride in the team and the steps that you guys have taken this season. Maybe thinking about some of the changes that need to happen in the off season to take that next step forward. Maybe some regrets, I imagine, about the way that the season ended for you guys. So I'm just curious about some of those thoughts that you're mulling on right now.
Yeah, look, it's really important in our mentality. We stay present with each moment, right? Like, I think the best way we could have approached this game was like, okay, we just learned through a season. We're in playoffs, and yeah, well, of course we can have regrets and things we wanted to do better, but let's grab the positives and know what we're capable of. Look, we beat a lot of good teams this year. We beat Philly, who's a MLS contender, Seattle Sounders, right? LAFC. We beat Houston Dynamo. We beat Seattle's twice, right? Home and away. And, I thought we were unlucky not to beat Nashville, the League's Cup finalists, and so like, I think there's good references there that say, hey, we can compete and beat anybody at any moment, right? Now to do it consistently over a season and to do it in a way where you're not just above the playoff line, you're at home in playoffs, right? Like that stings because we were one win away, from being home in this game. And that stings because it was there to grab, but it's not easy. We hit the post multiple times. We push those games. Go look at those XGs. Go look, like I thought we played with the winning mentalities to push that and it didn't bounce our way. So let's get better. We took positive steps. We definitely will reflect on and off the field things to keep getting better. But look, we grew a lot and I look forward with this group, no doubt. There will be adjustments in the offseason. Every team will have adjustments. We'll see what those are at the right moment. That's not the thought right now. I'm not going to even make a comment on that. But it's like, what an amazing foundation. And I have no doubt in this group, in this club, to take another step.
Next, we'll go to Doug Zimmerman.
Hi, I just wanted to talk about your second half substitution of Kid Kyle for Hoppy. Just kind of put your thinking in that move, and also, it also seemed he was really added a real positive offensive punch in the second half.
Yeah, Kate, look, Hoppy did some good things and drove the ball forward and worked his butt off defensively. He scored a few really important goals for us to put us in this position, right? And so there's competition there, and both are guys that know each other from some domestic national team experiences, and both young players that have bright futures and have really helped us compete this season. Cade came in fantastic, energy, confidence. It's a great game for him where, we're having to defend in mid and lower blocks here and there and to create space in behind and isolations. And I thought he really pushed them back and, almost scores a great goal driving across the box, almost sets up another goal for a tap. And so really proud of him and just a great mentality, whether starting or coming into the game, knowing that he's dangerous, he's going to help the team, and he's going to keep getting better.
Next, we will try again with Jason Mastrodonato. All right, we will go to Robert Jonas.
Thank you, Coach. Again, I think, any game that goes to penalties, there's a bit of a crapshoot there, albeit with Tim Mealy on the other side. Not sure it's a 50-50, but the guys did show well tonight. I want to take us back to the first half and how things did play out tonight. Your team had no shots on goal in the first half. It did play very stout defensively. It did look like it was very well organized. And then things did start to change in the second half. How much did containing Kansas City and then looking for opportunities as the game wore on kind of go into your game plan tonight? And were you happy with the execution of that plan?
Yeah, look, I'm proud of the execution and the intention because we can't control the outcome and the result, but we can work, we can focus on what we can control. I thought our attitudes were excellent and we were super aggressive. And we were always willing to work to get behind the ball. You look, first half, I will say this, like statistically, we actually did have, I think, 6 or 7 possessions in and around their box with the ability to cross the ball. and with numbers, and we didn't execute it right. So we didn't reward ourselves with putting in the service. And I'm not talking about a blind cross in the corner. I'm talking about like edge of the 18 into the box and dangerous, like we call it a prime assist zone, like an area that, and I learned that from someone else. But at the end of the day, like it's a dangerous area that we had penetration and possession in, and we didn't get the cross or that shot off. And so like I think there was potential there, right? But I overall liked going into halftime that defensively we were pretty solid and committed to what we were trying to do. And then second half, I thought we made better decisions in the attacking third. We'd had some better combos. We had a little more patience to circulate the ball, find the weak side, and started getting our crosses off, starting to create a little more danger. And like, you know, the XG was equal till the 70th minute. And, you know, then they started to put some more balls in the box and we had to deal with that. But I liked how we grew into the game. And, you know, I would say this, if we were in extra time, because of the way our guys, I thought our fresh legs came in and were pushing the game. Like if we went to extra time, I have no doubt I thought we could have even had a good effort to win it there in extra time if there was no PKs.
Next, we'll
Hey, I'll say this. Sorry, I should have said this earlier. Look, congrats to Kansas City, man. I know Peter really well. I admire him and the staff in a way that, you know, that they had to deal with adversity in the early season and then fight their way back in. So just congrats to them and Kansas City. It's always a tough battle against him. And you know, when I was done with Dallas and getting my experiences with U.S. Soccer, and then when I was thinking about my next step with San Jose, he was really there for me in a mentorship way, like giving me advice about growing and leadership and coaching. And so you know, congrats to them, and I wish them the best moving forward.
We will close with a final question from Marco Kolovich.
Hey, Luchi, congratulations on this season and the turnaround that you guys had for this team. You know, to be kind, I'm going to say that the refereeing was very inconsistent tonight, and you know it's easy for players to lose their emotions or let them get the best of them in that situation. But your team didn't. They stayed the course. They didn't let some calls or some lack of calls, you know, affect them. And is that something you were maybe telling them late in that second half to keep your cool and not, you know, let the refereeing dictate how you guys were going to play? Because it seemed like they did that all the way till the end.
Yeah, I thought there was some inconsistency of like 50-50 duels. Somehow their fouls called for them and then they're not called for us. I thought there was inconsistency there, but nothing that was too drastic, to be fair. And yes, the mentality going into the game, even before it started, was, look, whatever is called or not, like it's about stay present, stay focused in each moment. The next moment is the most important. Reconnect, re-engage, and put your energy in the next action. And I thought our boys did that fantastic. We didn't dwell on a missed call or this or that or a card. So, you know, but yeah, I thought it could have been more consistent. But these things happen when you don't play at home and there's a home environment. They have a good, you know, pressure home environment. But look, I maybe a little lopsided, but nothing crazy, nothing that we couldn't handle and still get the job done.
We'll close with the final question in Spanish on behalf of Telemundo.
Hola, profe. Felicidades por una gran temporada. ¿Qué mensaje tienes para toda la gente de nuestros fans y para sumar de esta temporada?
Sí, en inglés estaba diciendo, número uno, muy orgulloso. Muchas gracias por el apoyo de los fanáticos, ¿no? Desde mi primer día fuera de la cancha, desde mi primer práctica, juego, adentro, fuera de la cancha todo el año, con adversidades, con altas, bajas, pero empujando, siempre tratando de progresar nosotros y competir como equipo, sintiendo la afición, sintiendo el apoyo, sintiendo la intensidad, la energía en el estadio, en los mensajes, y gracias a ustedes estamos acá compitiendo en un juego de playoff por gran parte de ustedes. Y mira, queremos seguir mejorando y creciendo, y perdón que no avanzamos, y perdón que no estamos en casa en el playoff, y es por eso lo vamos a pelear para mejorar y tratar de hacerlo el próximo año. Tenemos muy buen base para seguir progresando y mejorando. Tenemos mucho fe en este grupo, muy orgulloso de los chicos, de los jugadores, de los profes, que pusieron todo el año. su sacrificio dentro y fuera de la cancha, buenísimos profesionales, buen grupo. No sentí nunca que eran como víctimas con excusas, siempre querían mejorar, buscar soluciones como guerreros, y muy orgulloso de ellos y gracias a ellos por nosotros representar a ustedes adentro y fuera de la cancha. Bueno, nosotros vamos a ir, ahora tenemos que ver el playoff en la tele, va a doler mucho, no queremos eso, ni ustedes, si no estamos jugando, pero va a ser nuestro próximo momento que hay que aceptar. Vamos a tener reflexión para seguir tratando de progresar como club y como equipo y pido que seguimos con fe, seguimos con toda la energía para 2024 y gracias por este año.
Thank you, everyone. We will be back with a Earthquakes player momentarily.
I want to thank Ben Perez for some of the translation there in the chat as well. Luchi remarking at the end that he is proud of the team, that, you know, their mentality, they're not having a victim mentality, and that they are not making excuses for what happened there. I wanted to go over to Robert Jonas first, because I think that your question was kind of in regard, or at least he responded to your question in this regard as well, talking about how their approach was defensively solid, that they were committed to the game plan that Luchi had put together. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are, Robert, in regards to Luchi's response to your question.
Yeah, you know, I tweeted at halftime, I thought the Quakes game plan was going according to plan, minus the opportunities, and Luchi saw the same game I saw. So, you know, clearly, you know, this was a team that was, you know, set up to, you know, keep, you know, Kansas City from getting clear chances, and relying on a defense and a goalkeeper that could make the stops when necessary. It is a bit disappointing that the opening 11 wasn't able to take advantage of those opportunities. You know, if they had that many touches around the box, then, you know, that's maybe not your best 11. And we saw much better offensive output out of the substitutes, as well as, you know, when they started the game against Austin, also not really allowing a whole lot of opportunities to that team either. But, you know, he went with the veterans. I didn't get to kind of ask that follow-up. We don't get many follow-ups on these press conferences anymore, you know, but that would have been sort of the next question, you know, going back to the very starting lineup and some of those decisions. I think they did what he wanted them to do defensively, and I know that's going to rub some fans the wrong way, that it's too conservative. But when you're playing on the road against a team that's hot like Kansas City, you know, a big win they had on decision day and a lot of momentum, 7 wins in their last 10 games, you can't go in there and just stand toe-to-toe and hope you can score more goals. That's not been the way the Quakes have operated for a month now. They've shown they can manage games, and they can manage to keep games close. And in that sense, they did exactly that. I can't remember which, Alex, it might have been your question about building for the future. I mean, that is the next, you know, big step. You know, sure, okay, you can play defensively, but if you can't score goals, it's going to be 34 straight draws, which wouldn't make the playoffs this year. So that is going to be something that Luchi and his staff and Chris Leach are going to have to look at pretty seriously as we move ahead into the weeks and months ahead.
Yeah, Luchi said that they only needed adjustments heading into next season, that they didn't need any drastic moves. And
pretty big adjustments.
I disagree. I think those adjustments would need to be pretty sizable, because I still think there's a sense that, sure, the Earthquakes met the bare minimum expectations this season, especially in a expanded playoff field, but they didn't kind of break that ceiling, right? They had an opportunity to break that season, that ceiling at the beginning of League's Cup. They looked like they could go and challenge and be a 4th or 5th place team. And if they'd done that, I think the fan base would be incredibly happy with where this club is at right now. But I think the fans are not happy with where the club's at right now. Maybe they're willing to tolerate it, understanding that last season they allowed 69 goals and we're at the bottom of the MLS table, and maybe this is the most you can expect for. But I don't think anybody here is going to be singing Luchi Gonzalez's praises until he can take this team to 4th or 5th place in Major League Soccer, and that's going to require pretty big changes. And I'll say the last thing, kind of retrospectively looking back, that confuses me so much is that he keeps saying, and he said this multiple times at the end of the season as well, but he said it like 3 times tonight, that he's proud of the team because they didn't have a victim mentality, because they didn't put their heads down or start blaming each other. And I keep wondering what big like malady they suffered, right? What they've been victimized by, because it's putting them in a position as if something terrible happened to this team, as if they, lost all their players to injury or had something awful happen within the squad, and the team, was really strong to keep together and go through that together. But I don't know what that thing would have been. They're certainly not the protagonists here. At the end of the season, drawing 6 out of their last 8 games, they were not pushing the tempo. They were not actually, going and claiming their destiny. So I don't know what they would have been victimized
I think I know
by.
the answer to the question,
celebrate.
Alex. Just considering what Luchi has said throughout the season, I haven't been with you guys the last few games because I've been busy, doing other things. But going back to some of the comments that Luchi has made throughout the season and some of the comments he made in response to Jamon's question from tonight, he sounds like he truly believes that the ball is not bouncing the way of the team. I'm just restating what Luchi said, not agreeing or disagreeing with what he said, but restating what he said. The ball hasn't been bouncing their way. He continues to look at the positives through the difficulties that they're having. And I think that's the answer to your question, Alex. I think a lot of folks who are listening now, who've been watching the team throughout the season, would agree with you, and I do too. But I don't think that Luchi sees it the same way. So either it is, as some folks have said in the chat, these are just platitudes, just he's getting out there and answering the questions because he has to, or he truly believes that. And so, Jamon, I was going to ask you what you thought about his response to your questions, because you've had the opportunity to continually ask him about this throughout the season, and he's giving a lot of the same answers. And you got to unmute yourself there, Jamon.
Yeah. Sorry, I mute because I think it's better for the fans to hear when the press conference is going on. We know that Luchi, and look, people can dislike me if they dislike Luchi, because I think philosophically there's a lot of that we have agreement on. The things that we have agreement on is that probabilities in this sport matter, and every edge you can get in those probabilities absolutely over a period of time does matter. That's why we've been running simulations all year long on the season outcomes, and we've been doing it 10,000 times. Why? Because in a real season, you get to do it one time. So you got to do this season. But I got news for Luchi. I don't agree that the team, the ball hasn't bounced the way of the team. I think they haven't made their own luck when it comes to the attacking side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, I agree with him. And I think the signing of Rodriguez, in retrospect, we thought it wasn't a great signing last year. Looks really good right now. The signing of Danielle, a lot of fans hated that signing because they love JT, including some people on this, I won't say who, didn't like that signing either. And guess what? That one was right. Now, I didn't like Hoppy. And you know what? I'm not going to say Alex was right, because Alex said he would score 5 goals and he scored 2, but he did better than I thought, even if he didn't quite live up to Alex's expectations.
Jamon can't give me anything. You can't give me anything, Jamon.
I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to. So
no, he won't give you an inch. He's the heel, Alex.
I think what this team did is they shored up the defense. That was always the plan. They had to overspend because of the Nathan injury, and they weren't able to invest in the attack what they wanted to do in the middle of the season, outside of the very, I think shrewd moves, given the amount of cap space they had to get Akinola and Hoppy. And one of those turned out very well. The other, not so much so far. So they made those defensive investments, and now the shoe has to go on the other foot. Now, unfortunately for that shoe that needs to go on the other foot and the investment in the attack, they're going to have a big decision to make on Nathan. They're going to have a big decision to make on Rodriguez, and those are not cheap decisions. The decision, I think, on Hoppy, the decision to make on Io is more obvious to me from a roster building perspective. They're too expensive. So I wouldn't go forward with either one of those. I think there's a lot of Hoppy level players in this league that you can get. That said, they've gotten that defense taken care of, but it's going to be expensive to maintain it, is my one concern. And, in retrospect, right, the sale of players that they didn't make means they have less GAM coming into this offseason, because they haven't generated that from selling players. And I'm starting to be concerned that they're going to have what they needed for what they wanted to do in year 2, which is to go and now be able to invest in the attack, specifically in that 10 or creative attacking midfielder, and specifically probably on that left wing.
Jamie, you're just talking about maintenance moves, though. That's the easy stuff.
I don't
Re-signing
think those are
Rodriguez,
I don't think
easy
those are
decision.
maintenance moves at all.
Letting Nathan go, easy. Looking at Hoppy, if the transfer fee works, easy. Letting go Akinola, easy. You know, keeping Montero, if the salary can work. I think those are all easy decisions. You're not
comes
talking
right back
about
down
adding
to the left
anything.
wing and the
I
10,
think
which are not going to be easy moves.
the only way that they can add things is if they move Benji Kikanovic and they move Cade Cowell. And I think that we're going to look back on this season and we're going to really, really regret the fact that Chris Leach absolutely flubbed those two transfers. And I don't think that that anyone can stand up for those decisions now because of the season that Benji Kikanovic had and because of the season that Cade Cowell has. You're not going to get more than $2-3 million for either of those players. If Chris Leach had been willing to step up to the plate, you know, bite the bullet and make those sales, I think the Quakes would be in the perfect place going into next season with two big sales out of the way. You have momentum. You can get new, fresh, young players to take their spot on the left wing, get a new 10 with the idea that you can then flip them again, make another $2-3 million. But now they're stuck. Now they're stuck because of those two decisions. And I don't know where they go from here. I think they might end up, if I were Chris Leach, I would eat the loss. I would eat the loss on Cade Cowell. I'd eat the loss on Benji Kikanovic, and I'd get the moves no matter what, because both of them need to go to greener pastures to succeed, and they're not going to do that under Luchi Gonzalez. We've seen a season's worth of them playing under Luchi, and they are not the right fit for his system. They can be great players in different situations, and the Quakes, and they shouldn't hold on to that false hope that maybe they'll do something next year. If the Quakes are serious, I think they need to find moves for those players, because that'll be better for the club and better for the players, and then reinvest that in some real difference makers up top who are going to actually give this team goals. And I think that's the only way that the Quakes can kind of get out of this cycle of mediocrity. I don't see any way for the Quakes to improve unless they're willing to actually make those big changes and big additions to the offense. And I don't see any other way you get there, James.
So I certainly agree with you in terms of the
form of really one central player, to be quite honest. The big change that this team needs is that one central player. There's everything else you can do
Chris
with
Leach
him
has made he's made the moves, though. I mean, I think in the particular situation of Cade Cowell, particular situation of Benji Kikanovic, completely agree with you, Alex. But I think from the very beginning of the season, when there was the injury to Nathan, I think the front office has shown that they are willing to make those moves to improve the team. You happen to have a great point, though. Like, offensively, it shows on the stat line, right? It shows that this has been the biggest issue with the team. I wouldn't go so far to say is that like they're blowing it all together. I think that there are mistakes that were made. There were some really great players that were brought in. Mensah, you know, that was kind of like up in the air. We saw a couple really great games from him at the end of the season, but we did have Rodriguez and we did have Tanner Beeson shoring up the back line, especially with Daniel there, which was another signing that you had already brought up as well. Robert, Jonas, wanted to bring you back into the conversation as well, talking about ways to improve the team. We've heard from Alex and Jamon already, you know, whether this needs to be more like wholesale moves that need to be made or just like minor tweaks and maintenance. And ultimately, whether or not you agree with Luchi that it is sort of sticking with the guys who he has and then perhaps moving from there and making those slight adjustments.
I would be surprised if there's big changes. And, you know, I agree with the comments. We had very big discussions in the summer about this.
We're interrupting Robert to go to a player.
Again, this is
Hello,
always
everyone. Thank you for your
Go to Robert
patience.
first
We are
next time,
doing
okay?
midfielder Jack Skahan. In the interest of time, we are only going to be taking a couple questions, but we will start with Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hey, Jack, good to talk to you again. Obviously a disappointing result tonight, but I thought you came on and brought some good energy in the game. And plus, you know, you're the first player in the last two playoffs to get one past Melia, like we talked about midweek. So talk about kind of a little bit about what you were asked to do when you got on the pitch tonight, and then when you had the opportunity to take the penalty kick, kind of what was running through your head at that point and what you wanted to do, and did you execute it? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I was just told to
Muted.
you know, try to create attacks and be physical and defensively do my job. But when we have it, you know, try to create a goal and be physical with the center backs. And I thought that's what I did. I might have gone over the top of that tackle, but he's the one who sprained my ankle, so I was kind of mad. And then, yeah, the penalty, honestly, I just focused on the ball. It was loud. And with the penalty, I feel like if you can focus on the ball and use the technique that you want to use, and he went the right way, and if you hit it hard enough, it's probably going in. And unfortunately, it went in. He's a good keeper on PKs for sure.
Next, we'll go to Doug Zimmerman.
Pass.
No worries. We'll go to Fabian Renkel. All right, we will go to Robert Jonas.
I will definitely take the opportunity to ask a question. Thanks for the insight on the yellow card. Obviously, well earned in that case, getting that tonight. I want to kind of go to that penalty kick shootout, because a lot of times when you're kind of watching from the stands or watching from TV, you don't really get to be a part of the conversation as to what you as players are talking to each other about, what the coaches are talking about. What was some of the strategy? What was some of the talk going into that kick in terms of who was going to take kicks, who's willing to step forward, and even speaking to the order of kicks tonight?
There's really not a ton of time going into that. We're told the order, and the order is, predicated on the coaching staff's probably the conversations they had all week. We practiced them. We felt great because we have Daniel. And PK shootouts, it's kind of a crapshoot. Like, it's tough. The conversation is, be confident, go up there with confidence, try to bury it. Bring energy, a lot of bring energy. And I think we did that. It was just only shootouts are a tough way to end the game.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes tonight's post-game press conference.
Pretty short press conference there with Jack Skahan, considering the two passes that we had.
Oh man,
Robert, definitely appreciate you
Robert,
asking
you got to talk about it. Best part of the entire show, everything.
Straight to Robert.
Jack Skahan going revenge tackle for the high ankle sprain and taking a yellow for it. Come on, Robert. Let's talk.
I mean, that makes it for me. I mean, that's I'm glad we got a chance to get that incredible player insight. That's actually what you get when you go to the locker room and talk to guys. So I'm surprised we got a press conference confession like that. I'm glad he spoke a little bit to the penalties, although I know that it's hard to really dissect what goes into the planning. But knowing that it wasn't a case of players demanding the ball, that if the coaches are putting them forward in a prescribed lineup and a prescribed setup, who's going to kick when, then I think that then puts it back on players. And only if a player is willing to say, I can't do this, would you expect any changes. So knowing that, and knowing that especially with Jackson and his miss, I'm sure that's going to haunt him for quite a while. That everyone did what they could do, player wise did what they could do to be ready. It would have been interesting to talk to Luchi a bit more about that as well, Jamon, based on your point about who could have been available for penalties based on the substitution patterns tonight. But perhaps that actually speaks to the idea that this wasn't necessarily his top 5 choice overall in the roster, but his top 5 choice for the 11 guys that he expected to be on the field at the end of the game.
But there are 3 guys who I can confidently say, maybe 4 guys who I can confidently say, maybe more than this. Okay, there are a few guys who I can confidently say had excellent seasons. Jack Skahan is one of them. And Jack Skahan has been a class act throughout the season, and he's one of the few guys who's been willing to push the tempo up top, to create chances, and to be the protagonist. Christian Espinosa has been that person consistently. Rodriguez in the back line has been that person. Daniel's been that person. In the midfield, there hasn't been a ton of players who can do that. Jackson Newell didn't do that this season. Sure, he played solidly. Jamir Montero played solidly. Carlos Grezzo played solidly. In the midfield, Jack Skahan was the one guy who stepped up and actually was willing to take the game by the scruff of the neck and score goals and create chances. And he did that tonight when he came on. When he came on, he was getting into pockets of space, having good layoffs, then sprinting in behind, creating chances, putting in chances. So the midfield, I think, is going to be a key area over the offseason that they need to reinforce. I still think they need another 10 in that mold, but I'm glad that Jack Skahan is there as an option. And I would love to see what he could do alongside guys who are equally, energetic and dynamic and hungry as he is.
I wanted to kind of reframe that really quickly, Alex, if you don't mind. I think if you consider which players on the team whose stock has risen this season, I think Jack Skahan is the one that really stands out to me. And you mentioned Christian Espinoza as well, despite the fact that he was already one of the top players on the team, continues to show why, there was even a point in the season where he was in the MVP conversation, where he was in the Golden Boot race at one point. And so, yes, I think it is lesser. Yes, there were players who did have good seasons, and you mentioned a couple of them. But if we're thinking about play, if we're going back to some of this conversation about players' value, I think Jack Skahan definitely stands out as somebody whose value has risen, and he brings something to this team that the other midfielders, especially central midfielders, don't necessarily bring. And it is a spark. It is this fire, this energy that he has to invigorate the team when they can't quite find it. So, Jamon, I wanted to go back over to you here. It looked like you wanted to jump in on the conversation as well in this regard. So maybe we have time to go around the table once more, and then we'll bring it over to our final thoughts as we finish up in this last post-game breakdown of the season.
You don't have to make it sound so sad
I think we should plan to have a season-ending show.
Absolutely.
I think we've done it the past few years, and I want to give that to the fans, particularly our patrons. Absolutely deserve that. And we do need to have a Zoom call for our patrons, by the way. So I want to try to get that done as well. Let them ask some questions. I think there's some interesting things. We've been pushing about talking about, hey, wouldn't bring back probably Jamiro Montero, particularly not at the DP position. And that's a position that needs to be upgraded. But also we have to consider that we've got two players that maybe should be challenging that position in Nico and Jack, both of which I thought have stepped up and gotten better as the season went on. And unfortunately, Jack, people might go well, is it Jack injury prone at this point? Well, he mentioned to us on Wednesday that these are the first injuries he's gotten, since one of his first years at North Carolina. He's not been injury prone. And unfortunately, he got his second injury was because he got taken down by a player that he retaliated on tonight, which is kind of funny and cool. So, the question I think that's in front of us is, how do you improve this central midfield for next season and get much more out of it and get much better service, much better, everything out of it? I think honestly, you have to get really courageous. Can you move a Jackson Yule as a possibility and give that spot to a Nico? Can you not sign a Montero back and maybe consider Skahan or a big signing there, and Skahan can compete for the other two spots? But I think there are other options that are more bold that we don't talk about, but that this team probably has to consider in order to remake it. And I think there's a really good question. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because I thought it was worth trying to answer. I appreciate it when the fans do bring some good questions to the show, and I want to try to answer as many of them as possible. There was a comment earlier about whether we felt that the lack of offense this year was a Luchi system issue or a player issue, and whether or not this was a problem at FC Dallas. Well, the thing with his time at FC Dallas is Luchi didn't play with the defensive structure that he had today. He was a little bit more freewheeling on the defensive structure. So it's a little bit of apples and oranges. There's been a lot of complaints about, that this is like a Berhalter system. It absolutely is.
There was a Berhalter illusion in that press conference, if you didn't catch that.
There's a lot of Berhalter illusion, a lot of language that matches Berhalter language. But I think Luchi was like that already. I don't think he learned how to talk from Berhalter. I think he already talked like that in FC Dallas. He's always been a very button up guy when it comes to press conferences and his conversations. So the thing that, I think he's learning, he has to figure out is, how does he get more juice out of this attack? And yes, you're going to hope that Chris Leach makes some big signings, but if he doesn't, what needs to change in order to renovate this attack? We saw some good things with a 3-5-2 this season. I'm going to call it more of a 3-6-1. I don't think they really committed to the two up top. But we saw some good stuff tonight. Jack Skahan came in, played some striker, false nine, interesting, some good stuff. Like, are there other shakeups that can be done that you would actually run out there as your regular starting lineup, or, more often, majority type of games? I think those are some things that really Luchi needs to take the time to think about, is how does he bring something different to the attack next year while not losing the structure that he put in this year that helped the Quakes be much better defensively. And that's the real trick. And maybe there will be a big signing, and maybe there won't. Chris Leach has done a good job always, surprising us with the signing side of things. So, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I think you also have players in the team like Jack, like Nico, who it's time for, them to get showcased. It's time for, when they've been on, they've been good. Keep running them out there. Give them more starts. If you're going to bring back a Hoppy, fine. Give him more starts. I like putting Hoppy out there tonight. I really like Cade off the bench. And Alex and I have been asking to bring Cade off the bench. And guess what? Cade plays great off the bench, right? Should have put a ball in the back of the net probably, but generally speaking, he played great. These are the things that I think they really have to think about, coming into next year. And I want to dive into these types of topics in the postseason show and really kind of get into some of this.
Jim,
and we can talk through the roster and the things that need to be done and the changes that need to be made, and look at Colin's spreadsheet. And by the way, Colin needs to be here for that because, he's the keeper of the spreadsheet and has the best ideas in terms of the roster. So I want to hear from him too.
Jamie, one last thing I want to get to on that note here is that you think that's a Luchi Gonzalez concern or a Chris Leach concern? Because Chris Leach is heading into his third season as a general manager, and I think if he can't continue to make progress and get a roster together that is capable of making the playoffs, I think he's in serious hot water here. Because, I mean, look, he's had, already this is going to be his third transfer window to get, Luchi Gonzalez the roster that he needs to succeed. I think a lot is riding on this offseason for Chris Leach. Now Luchi Gonzalez has a year under his belt. He knows exactly what he wants and what this team needs to succeed. It's pretty obvious for all of us to see. And I think the pressure's on Chris Leach to do that. I don't know if that's a Luchi concern. I think Chris Leach needs to give him the players to succeed.
Someone's asking what the stadium model is. My family got me for Christmas Manchester United. I'm not a Manchester United fan, so just FYI. But it is Manchester United Stadium.
That feels like it could be bad luck right now, Jamon. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's the reason.
My family got me Manchester United. I'm not a Manchester United fan. It's an avocado. Thanks. It's the same energy, Jamon. I did want to.
Nice sight lines there. So.
Robert, I think we're at about the hour mark here on the show, and it's probably about time for us to get into the final thoughts, because we have a lot of this conversation will carry on into our end of the season episode, which we will bring to you. So I wanted to go ahead and transition over into the final thoughts segment. And Robert, I wanted to bring it back over to you. Your final thoughts after this match and as we head into that end of the season show.
Yeah, it's I love all the talk about roster moves and all that, because that's the fun part. We're in the hot stove heater part of the season now that the final whistle has been blown on the Quakes season, and I'm going to enjoy it. There's going to be a lot to speak about. I will not be surprised if Major League Soccer adjusts its roster regulations in the off season. I think bringing Messi into the league is going to put pressure on teams to kind of maybe add another DP slot and some of the other mechanisms that, again, aggressive owners are going to be able to take advantage of. And I think we're going to be talking about whether or not the Earthquakes are going to be one of those teams that takes advantage of it. Having said all that, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the progress the Quakes have made, while minimal, and as Alex says, was the minimal expectation, I think is a really good way to go into this off season. That you can judge a lot of the progress in season 2 by what they were able to maintain here in season 1. The spine of the team is better than it's been in quite a while. When you have Daniel back there, when you put Carlos Grueso in there, having Rodriguez play a full season, matching him up if they're willing to pay his salary to keep him in Major League Soccer, matching him up with another high quality center back is going to be absolutely key. And at that point, you build from it. And I'm not going to get overly confident that this team is going to go from 9th to 1st or even 9th to 4th next year, but they should be a 9th to 6th, a 9th to 5th. They should be able to be a comfortable enough team throughout a season, and that's going to be the expectations that we should have on Luchi Gonzalez and that Luchi is going to put on himself. I would have loved to have seen the Quakes overturn the Tim Melia, kind of narrative tonight. It didn't happen, and unfortunately, maybe fortunately, I have a lot more free time on my calendar over the next couple of weeks as like he and the team. I'm not sure how much additional playoff soccer I'll be watching for a small period here, but I will think back on some of the positives of the season with respect to what they did improve on, and then look to see that they can make those improvements moving forward.
All right, why don't we go over to Jamon Moore to get your final thoughts here, Jamon?
Yeah, final thoughts are, checkbox met, I guess, in terms of Luchi's initial promise of make the playoffs first year. And, of course, you can throw a dart at the fact that it's the play-in game and that maybe they should have done better, gotten a win at home on the last game of the season so that this game could have been played at home tonight. But when it comes down to PKs, if you can't get a goal in the back of the net, you're going to get a similar result. And again, I think that's on more of the Quakes players than any more of the goalkeepers. So it's disappointing to go out this way. It's disappointing to kind of have to deal with the Sporting Kansas City Melia narrative, yet again. And, I think hearing that over and over again will just, wear me down, I guess. But I do think that now in year 2, what I like is that there's an opportunity to set higher expectations. Fans have higher expectations. We have higher expectations. Luchi says he has higher expectations. The organization tells me they have higher expectations. Well, guys, it's year 2. You've got the coach you want. You've got the GM. You've got everything in place that you've wanted to have. It's all there. And now it's time to reach for something else. Next year, this team should be reaching for a home playoff spot. They should be finishing top 4 in the Western Conference. And hopefully they get set up in the offseason to be able to do that. If they don't, I think that will be a huge disappointment. That's the type of progress that the fans deserve. It's the type of progress that all of us who have covered this team for a long time, have been asking to see. And I'm willing to give a coach year 1, just like I gave Almeida year 1. But I want to see what you can do in year 2. And so, now I think it does turn up the pressure a bit, and it should, on Luchi. Making the playoffs was a low bar, but it was met. And now it's like, let's set a higher bar and let's see if you can meet it. And that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, Alex, what do you think?
Look, if the Quakes are going to make a big, bold step forward next season, that doesn't come out of nowhere. They get there by making big, tough decisions in the offseason, by being willing to let go of guys like Jackson Ewell, like Cade Cowell, like Benji Ikanovich, that have been with this club a long time, but who are could be holding this roster back right now. If the Quakes need to move pieces to get the number 10 they want, to get the left winger that they want, they should do that. You don't get to 4th place in MLS by acting tepid. And I think they've been a little tepid over the last year with the way that they've handled the transfer market. Now is the time to make bold decisions. If they want to bet on this team, they need to back it up with strong action here, and that's what the fans deserve, right? I was amazed with the atmosphere at that Austin FC game on decision day, and thinking the Quakes can sell out that stadium. It's a beautiful stadium, and they can pack it and make it a wonderful atmosphere if this team does well, if they give the fans something to cheer for. And I don't like comparing it to other teams, but you look at the New York Red Bulls versus Cincinnati game, and that atmosphere at New York Red Bulls was not great. And I'm thinking, hang on, if that game is in the PayPal Park in the San Jose with the San Jose Earthquakes, that is going to be a raucous atmosphere. The fans have been dying for a home playoff game for a long time. That's the minimum that they deserve at this point, and that's what they should expect. And that everybody in the front office, the technical staff needs to step up to that challenge. They need to be willing to make it happen. I would rather them make bold, decisive moves that don't work, then continue to make tepid incremental process that ultimately doesn't, break that barrier and get them to the next level.
Yeah, I really appreciate that comment, Alex. From my perspective, though, I'm also fearful of what that means if the team does make those big drastic moves. It's, a big reward, but it's also a very big risk as well. And I think where I sit, I'm not exactly happy with the results and where the team is. I am glad that they made the playoffs this season. Don't know that I fully agree with Luchi and his approach and his view at the end of the season in terms of like how the team performed overall. But, if the team does end up swinging for the fences, who knows where that could end up? We can be back in the same place where the team was, 3-4 years ago when they brought in Matias Almeida, right? That was supposed to be the big overhaul that the team needed. And so I don't really feel that an overhaul is necessary. If you can find that medium between making the really big moves and keeping some of the core that you have, I think there's a lot of good things going for this team. I think they looked really great defensively during the season, especially considering the gaps that they had to fill, right? Guys really stepped up. And we saw some really great things from the goalkeeper, Daniel, who I think, I know that you had talked about possibly Daniel being sold to a bigger club in Europe, but I think this is somebody that the team needs to hold on to, and I think that keeping the core defensively is going to be something really important for this team. Maybe they go for a big name signing offensively or somewhere in the central midfield, but so long as that doesn't affect the integrity of the team and the good things, the positives that Luchi continues to talk about week in and week out in these press conferences, I think that's going to be really important. So I wanted to guide folks over towards our social media and our website before we leave tonight. Make sure you check out our Patreon at Quakes, www.quakesepicenter.com/Patreon. There it is at the bottom of the screen. For just a couple dollars a month, you can get early access to our content. You can get exclusive access to a lot of the content that we provide through our media team. So make sure you check that out. $5 a month will also get you access to the Slack where you can chat with us during the match. A lot of our folks who follow our organization, Quakes Epicenter, as well as the San Jose Earthquakes, are often on there throughout the week, not just during the matches. So there's a lot of great conversations that are happening about the team. So be sure to check that out. Check out our website at quakesepicenter.com and our social media. We are still on Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter. We are on Instagram as well. You can find us there. And check out the content on YouTube that Jamon has been putting out there for all of you. There was some really great interviews recently with Danger. We caught that one. We had the most recent one that just came out. Jamon, I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that a little bit. Kind of like
Ali Martin, the radio voice
Martin
for Sporting Kansas City. And one of the things we talked about for those of you who are getting ready for Bay FC and NWSL, she has done some work with the Kansas City Current. So we did a little bit of NWSL talk. We talked about her career. She, like Danielle Slayton, like Kate Scott, started as a sideline reporter and is now working her way up. She's also part of the Galazzo Network on CBS Sports. So it's a really interesting conversation. She's a wonderful person. Just because the game is over doesn't mean it's not worth going back and checking out. I do want to mention one thing for everybody. I know it's tempting to say like, hey, the season's over. I'm going to stop my Patreon. I'll come back next year. But this is the time that we actually need to start building up the base because we want to get ready for next year and begin to plan our travel. And this is the time also when articles start to come. If there's a signing, we're going to have shows. We're going to, have more conversations with the fans through our Zoom calls and everything. So just because the season's over, please continue to support the Patreon if you're a patron. And of course, if you can't afford it, we understand that. But ideally, we'd love to just keep you through the off season and help us build up our travel budget so we can travel even more. Because when this team is much better and they are going to be going for that home playoff spot, we're going to want the funds to be able to bring you some great coverage.
And I want to thank all of our wonderful patron and the whole community of folks that have been tuning in to this show throughout the season, who have been reading all of the wonderful articles by the crew and everyone in the patron Slack, right? Because you guys are the core of this community, and I whatever the end result, I've had a lot of fun this season being here I want to thank, this whole crew, you, Phil, Jamon, Robert, for making this season happen as well. It's been, another pleasure. And I'll say that, as fun as it is to, chat on the patron Slack with you guys and chat here afterwards, I value the patron Slack and this community just as much during the off season to keep me up to date on everything that's happening, because it's easy to miss things in the off season. But trust me, the patron Slack will stay active. Every little rumor, you hear it in the patron Slack first. And that's the only way that I can possibly keep everything together during the off season. I think it's just as important for me in the off season.
Thank you for those.
If you have questions about the Patreon, just to be clear, we put it into the show notes, so you can see it there. For some reason, the link doesn't work. Just go to quakesepicenter.com/Patreon. Make sure you add the E. A lot of people just put in patron, but it's actually Patreon. Or you can go to Patreon and find Quakes Epicenter in Patreon's website as well. So it goes either way.
Great. I wanted to extend a quick thanks to all of you once again, and to Colin, Asher, everybody who's contributed throughout the season, to my wife Sarah, who's been doing the photography, and very special thanks to all the folks who've been helping us out over within the organization, especially Pedro and Ryan, as they did a lot of hard work to ensure that we continued to get access so that we can bring you the best content through Quakes Epicenter. So big thanks to everybody who has done us those favors, and I hope that we have been able to bring you the content in a way that will continue that relationship. So make sure, those of you who are with us right now on YouTube, to subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications. We will be back with you soon with a post-season breakdown, and we hope that you will join us there during that time. So until then, we're all signing off. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone.